second. Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, just checking. We are live. So it's good to be alive and live. Okay, there we go. Okay, so let me get the guitar. So everybody, make sure everything's set. Today is a special day on the Vaishnava calendar, in the Vaishnava calendar. It is the day of the appearance of Srivasa Thakura. So we're going to speak about Srivasa Thakura today instead of do our normal reading in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So Srivasa Thakura, anyway, we'll speak about him. But first, we're going to chant the prayers of the Lord Nrsingadev. Why are we chanting the prayers of the Lord Nrsingadev? That's for the protection of the devotees, the protection of everybody. And in today's world where there's so much conflagration means fire, burning fire, material fire, spiritual fire, whatever, the three modes of material nature. We want everyone to be protected. And so that's why we're chanting the prayers of the Lord Nrsingadev before the class. Until this whole conflagration in Ukraine is over, we're going to keep chanting the prayers of the Lord Nrsingadev. So, let's go. Namaste, Narasimhaya, Palad, Jayante, Hiranyakashi Purvakshara, Shiratamka, Nikolaihe, Ituna Singha, Paratona Singho, Yato, Yamita Tona Singha, Bahira Singho, Vidayena Singho, the Sring Hamadim, Shalanam Prabhajoy, the Sring Hamadim, Shalanam Prabhajoy. Tavakara Kamala Prabhena Kama Buddhas Gano Dalita Iranya Kashipu Dano bringing Gano Isavatrita Narahani Rupa Gadisa Tavakara Kamala Purena Kama to sing Kamala, Marina Kamalu to sing. Danita, Irana Kasi Pudana Ring. Isabadrita, Nari Rupa, Daita Gadisa, Hate, Daita Gadisa, Daita Gadisa, Daita Sringadev, the Sringadev, the Sringadev, the Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Haribo, 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 Haribo. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parabhikacharya All Stoteta Satashi Shimad His Divine Grace Abhaya Chanana Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Srivasa Thakura Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Sayam Kunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Mathuradam Ki Jai Jagannath Swami Ki Jai Yamunamai Ki Jai Srimati Lasi Devi Ki Jai Samveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaura Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurapani Pacharni Nivashesha Shunyavadi Paschatcha Deja Tarane. So, Omagana Timidanda Shah Gananjana Shalakeha Chakshur Unmiditham Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. So, as I mentioned before, today, instead of reading the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we're going to talk about Srivasa Thakura, whose appearance day it is today. And we'll start off. Actually, why don't we start off with just the quote from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and I'll share the screen for this, and then we'll go back to the face screen after this. So, this is a very important verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So, Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Advaita Chandra, Jaya Gaur Bhaktivinoda, Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Advaita Chandra, Jaya Gaur Bhaktivinoda, Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Advaita Chandra, Jaya Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Okay, so this verse is as follows. This is about the chapter. The Chaitanya Charitamrita is that the 5 features of the Absolute Truth. So, Pancha Tattva Makam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Sarupakam Bhaktavatara Maktakyam Dhamami Bhakta Shaktikam. So, I'm going to read the word by word translation so we actually can understand the full import and purport of this particular verse. Pancha Tattva Atmakam means to understand or comprehend the 5 transcendental subject matters. Pancha, five tattva. That is, tattva means basically sometimes translated as truth, but it means like subject matters or categories in this particular context. Something that is an eternal category, not just like a temporary category like chair or table or car. Or those are not tattvas. It means something that continues to exist, always an eternal category, either of living entities or of energies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Of course, we basically understand, according to the Vishnu Purana, Vishnu Shakti Para Prokta Kshetrakyakya Tata Para Vidyakarma Sanganya Tritir Shakti Ishate, that we have the Vishnu Tattva, okay, and then you have you have the transcendental energy of the Lord, Para Prakriti. Then you have the living entity who is the marginal potency of the Lord, like ourselves. And then you have the external energy of the Supreme Lord. So these are all tattvas anyway. So understanding the five transcendental subject matters, Krishnam, unto Lord Krishna, that are related to Lord Krishna in the spiritual aspect. Bhakti Rupa, in the form of a devotee, that's Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna, but he's Bhakti Rupa. He's taken the Bhakti Rupa, the form of a Bhakta. Swarupa Kam means in the form, in the expansion of a devotee. And that, of course, is Lord Nityananda. Bhakta Avataram, in the incarnation of a devotee. That's basically through expansion of a devotee. Also can be understood as okay, yeah. So and then Bhaktakyam, Bhaktavataram, in the incarnation of a devotee, that's Srivasa Thakura. Bhaktakyam, known as a devotee, is actually Srivasa Thakura too. Namami Bhakta Shaktikam, the energy of the Supreme Personality of God. Generally, that's understood as Gadadhar, devotional energy. Okay, so let me offer my obeisance to Lord Sri Krishna, who has manifested himself in five as a devotee, expansion of a devotee, incarnation of a devotee, that's, of course, Advaitacharya, pure devotee, that's Srivasa Thakura, and devotional energy, that's Gadadhar Pandit Goswami. So maybe we should read this purport, because it's actually very interesting in this regard. Nityananda Prabhu is the immediate expansion of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is his brother. He is the personified spiritual bliss of Satchidananda Vigraha, 5.1, Rama Samhita. His body is transcendental, full of ecstasy and devotional service. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is therefore called Bhakti Rupa, the form of a devotee, and Sri Nityananda Prabhu is called Bhakti Sarupa, the expansion of a devotee. Sri Advaita Prabhu, the incarnation of a devotee, is Vishnu Tattva, belongs to the same category. There are also different types of bhaktas or devotees on the platform of neutrality, servitude, friendship, parenthood, and conjugal love. Devotees like Sri Damodar, Sri Gadadhar, and Sri Ramananda are different energies. This is confirmed Bhakta Shakti. This confirmed in the Vedic Sutra, Parasha Shakti Vivadai Vishuyatej, Bhavaki Jnana Balakriyacha. I just completed. That's from the Madhya Lila, 1365, also from the Vedas. All these bhaktas subjects taken together constitute Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Krishna himself. So Lord Chaitanya in five features. I'm going to stop sharing this right now. That's just the introduction to today's class about Srivasa Thakura. So Srivasa Thakura, let's start talking about Srivasa Thakura. Well, let's talk about the whole Panchatattva categories. Let me just set this up in case someone offers a comment in the meantime. That sometimes happens, and I just want to be aware of, let me just, someone says they're having trouble or they faint in ecstasy. I just want to be aware of that at the same time. So I'm just setting this whole thing up right now. Okay, got it. Okay, so let's start with Srivasa Thakura. So let's start with the whole Panchatattva. So there's three members of the Panchatattva, which we've spoken about before on Lord Chaitanya's appearance day, and Lord Nityananda's appearance day. previously, actually, in the past, in the near past. So the Vishnu Tattva manifestations of the Lord are Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Lord Nityananda, and Advaita Acharya. And so they're all of the same tattva, they're all the same person, Advaita Chutanadi Ananta Rupam, Ajam Purana Purasham Navayovanam Cha Vedeshu Durlavam Adurlavam Atma Bhakto Govindamadi Purasham Tamaham Rajami Dvaita. They're all the same person, acting differently, different capacities, and Krishna can do that. And sometimes they're not even aware they're the same person because that's Yogamaya. Krishna deliberately puts himself under the energy of the Lord, the Yogamaya, who arranges all of the pastimes of the Lord, so that these different interactions between the Lord and his expansions can take place. So, that's Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, and Advaita Acharya, and Gadadhar Pandit is the appearance of Srimati Radharani, Bhakta Shakti, the energy of Bhakti. Okay, he's Bhakta Shakti, or Bhakti Shakti. Anyway, so let's talk about Srivasa Thakura. Srivasa Thakura is Narada Muni. And Narada Muni is appearing in Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes. I mean, there's many interesting stories about Narada Muni being told to appear in Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes that come from the Chaitanya Bhagavad and Chaitanya Mangala, but I'm not going to tell those stories right now. So, Srivasa Thakura, before he was quite older than Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Srivasa Thakura's wife was Malini. And so before Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared, he lived in a place called Srihata, which was in West Bengal. But later on, right before Lord Chaitanya appeared, he moved to Navadvip. And in Navadvip, he and his wife, Malini, took care of Sachimata and Jagannath Mishra before and during Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance in this material world. So he was quite older than Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Of course, his place in Navadvip was called Srivasa Angam. And this Srivasa Angam was actually the place where the Sankirtan movement started. Of course, Srivasa Thakura later on left Navadvip back to his place at Srihat after the Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas and went to Jagannath Puri and also traveled all over India. And the reason he did that is he was feeling so much separation from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that he didn't want to remain in Navadvip because everything he saw at Navadvip reminded him of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's childhood pastimes, which he was very, very attached to. So, as I mentioned before, Srivasa Thakura is an incarnation of Narada Muni, and his brother, Sri Ram, who is his eternal associate, is an incarnation of another Muni named Parvat Muni. He had another brother named Sripati and Srinidhi. And he had a niece named Narayani, who happened to be Vrindavan Das Thakura's mother. Vrindavan Das Thakura was the one who wrote the Chaitanya Bhagavat. And Vrindavan Das Thakura is sometimes considered to be, or not just sometimes, but he is considered to be Veda Vyas, or an incarnation of Veda Vyas, the author or the compiler of the Vedic literatures. Srivasa Thakura's wife, Malini, as we mentioned before, that was her name. She's considered to be an incarnation of Ambika, not the Ambika who was Durga, but the Ambika who was Krishna's nurse when Krishna was a little baby in Vrindavan. So all these different identities are corroborated in the Gauraganadesh Dipika by this great author, Kavi Karnapur, who also wrote the Ananda Vrindavan Champu and other works. And Srivasa Thakura's niece, Narayani, who was the mother, Vrindavan Das Thakur, was actually Ambika's sister in the Vrindavan pastimes. So Srivasa Thakura was the friend of Jagannath Mishra, who was the father of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Malini also was the friend of Sachi. And so Malini cared for Sachi like a nurse when she was pregnant with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. However, after Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared and he grew up a little bit and got a little educated, he exhibited pastimes of an arrogant scholar. And arrogant means that he would challenge the Vaishnavas. Oh, he challenged the Vaishnavas to debate and sometimes defeat them. Wow. And so, in many cases, the Vaishnavas would try to avoid Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, although many of them in their hearts, like Advaitacharya, obviously Advaitacharya knew who Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was, because before Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared, Advaitacharya worshipped the womb of Sachimata and circumambulated her, so there was obviously knowledge. But still, because he was exhibiting the pastimes of a mundane scholar, then many of the Vaishnavas avoided him. And one time, Srivasa Thakura got so upset with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that he basically insulted him, because Lord Chaitanya was acting in a very arrogant fashion. He said to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, "Oh, crest jewel of the arrogant, do you know the purpose of life?" And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "By your mercy, one day I will become such a great Vaishnava, wow, that Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva and all the demigods will worship me." So Srivasa was thinking, phew, he's really proud, really proud. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exhibited this arrogant nature before he was initiated to sort of set an example for us and for the world in general that it's necessary, Divyagan Riddhi Prakashito, it's necessary to accept the lotus feet of a bona fide spiritual master in order to have one's heart illuminated with transcendental knowledge. Because transcendental knowledge cannot be attained or obtained by studying the Vedic literatures, as stated in the Mahabharata. Tarko Pratishta Shrutina Vivina, the Vedic literatures are multi-branched, nor by Tarko. Tarko means like logic and argumentation, like that. You cannot understand these things, and only by Mahajanayana Gatasapanta. Mahajanayana Gatasapanta means by following the footsteps or worshiping or serving the great devotees. This is the important point. I mean, one could Vedeshu Durlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakto. One could study the Vedic literatures forever and ever and ever and not understand a damn thing. That's a fact. And so we were actually giving a class about this the other day, talking about our relationship with His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, that we understand that by serving His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, everything will be revealed. Wow. And if we're trying to achieve spiritual perfection or spiritual enlightenment or a spiritual elevation without pleasing Prabhupada, Negatika Topi, simply by dint of our own mental faculties, then we'll simply be subject to the defects of the conditioned soul, which are, making mistakes, imperfect senses, cheating, and being illusioned. So because of that, we may be thinking that we're very advanced in devotional service and we're understanding our spiritual identity. but we may be an illusion. How do you know? How do you know you're not an illusion? Mm-mm. The only way you can know you're not an illusion is if you're pleasing a pure devotee. If you're serving a pure devotee, then you're actually out of illusion. Serving with your heart, with your body, with your mind, your words, etc., like that. That's why sannyasi is called the Tridandi sannyasi. It means he has 3 sticks on his danda. Actually, it's 4, but because the 4th one is the soul. And he's connected to Guru Maharaj. I had this realization today that, one is serving Prabhupada. Prabhupada is always right behind you, right next to you. It's pretty amazing. And then you have nothing to worry about. Otherwise, you're on your own. You're rowing your boat by yourself. Just like Prabhupada was crossing the ocean to come to America. And he was really getting sick on the boat. And then he had this dream. And in that dream, all the incarnations of the Lord were rowing the boat. And they assured him that you're going to be successful. So in the same way, the Bhagavatam describes that the spiritual master is the captain of the boat, and the Vedic literature is the favorable breezes, etc. Like that, the boat, of course, is the human body that takes one across the ocean of material nescience. Ocean of material nescience. And the whole ocean of material nescience becomes shrunk to no more than the quantity of water or quantity of nescience that's there in a calf's hoof print. So anyway, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, getting back to the point, he acted like a mundane scholar until he took initiation from Ishwara Puri in Gaya. And once he took initiation from Ishwara Puri in Gaya, he turned into a mad devotee. Mad in the sense of transcendentally mad. And at one point, when Lord Chaitanya came back to Navadvip, he said to Srivasa Thakura, he actually sat on the altar in Srivasa Thakura's house, and he said, I am the person you have been worshipping. Srivasa Thakura was worshipping Lord Nrsingadeva for protection from the invaders there and everything like that. And he showed Srivasa Thakura his 4 arms and says, who have you been worshipping all the time? It's been me. And then Srivasa Thakura immediately had this realization. And there's a beautiful quote that I'm going to read right now. Give me a second to pull it up. That Srivasa Thakura, is a prayer that Srivasa Thakura offered at Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's lotus feet, having realized that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So here's the quote. My obeisance is at the lotus feet of the support of the entire universe, Vishwambar, whose bodily color is like that of a newly arrived rain cloud, and whose garments are the color of a thunderbolt. My obeisance is at the lotus feet of the son of Sachi, who is bedecked with ornaments of peacock feathers and a garland of red bees. Gunja. That's the Gunjamala. My obeisance is at the lotus feet of the people of Gangadas. Gangadas was the teacher of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the beauty of whose lotus face conquers that of 10 million moons. My obeisance is at your lotus feet, you who carry a buffalo horn, stick, and flute. The 4 Vedas proclaimed you to be the son of Nanda. Unto you, my dear Lord, my obeisances I offer again and again. Today my birth, this is from the Chaitanya Bhagavat. Today my birth, my activities, my everything has become successful. Today my very existence has been crowned with great auspiciousness. Today the race of my forefathers has finally borne fruit, and my house, which is also their house, has become blessed. Today the great fortune of my eyes is completely beyond calculation, because I have been able to see that person whose lotus feet are served by the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi Devi. Wow. So, Anyway, that was Srivasa Thakura's prayer at the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And one time, let me tell several stories that occurred during Lord Chaitanya's sojourn in Navadvip with Srivasa Thakura. So Lord Chaitanya would stay or go to the house of Srivasa Thakura and have kirtan all the time. And one time, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to assure Srivasa Thakura that he would always be safe, because there was a lot of danger from the invaders of a certain religion we're not going to mention right now. But they would invade, and then they would, even sometimes at the behest of the Brahmanas, because the Brahmanas were very upset. The ritualistic Brahmanas were very upset that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was basically an egalitarian. He was ready to engage everyone, regardless of caste or creed or religion or gender, in Krishna's service. And that went against the commonly accepted structure of society. And so they complained sometimes to the Muslim invaders, and there was danger. So Srivasa Thakura, actually there was one time that, it was actually described several times that Srivasa Thakura was saved by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But one time, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became the boatman. He revealed this to Srivasa Thakura during the Mahaprakash Leela, when he said that one time there was an attack and there was a boatman with a boat who came and saved you, and that Lord Chaitanya revealed was himself. So one time, in order to ensure or assure Srivasa Thakura that Lord Chaitanya would always be able to protect them, this is such an interesting story. This was told this morning in the class too. That he said to Srivasa Thakura, just tell the Qazi. Qazi was the head of all the Muslims there, at least in the district. Just tell the Qazi to come with all of his men, his elephants, his horses, and everything like that, and I will get them all to faint in ecstasy. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to defeat the atheists not by killing them, but by putting them in so much ecstasy they couldn't be atheists anymore. They couldn't attack the devotees anymore. That's an interesting way to defeat your enemy. It's like having one of those arrows, like Lord Ramchandra. He had so many times he had the arrows of bewilderment. And one arrow he shot at the Rakshasas caused the Rakshasas to think that each and every other Rakshasa was Lord Ramchandra, so they killed each other off. So you can imagine an arrow you shoot at your enemy and they start rolling to the ground in ecstasy. You've actually defeated them if you could find such an arrow like that. And of course, that's the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. That if you can get someone chanting, just like Valmiki in his previous life, who was chanting, by trick, he was chanting Mara, Mara, Mara. You get someone chanting, then all their evil intentions, demoniac tendencies fade away. So that's really the point. You get people chanting. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, I can get all those Muslims and all those people chanting, the horses and the elephants and everything, just bring them here, and they're all rolling on the ground in ecstasy. And Srivasa Thakura said, you could really do that? And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, I'll prove it to you. So he called for little Narayani. Remember, I mentioned who Narayani was. So she's the mother of Vrindavan Das Thakur and the niece of Srivasa Thakura. Okay. It's not really mentioned who her father was or anything. Anyway, so he called for a little Narayani. And Narayani came. And he says, Narayani, chant Hare Krishna. And she was only 4 years old, remember. And so she started chanting Hare Krishna and was rolling on the ground, and tears were pouring from her eyes, like spurting out from her eyes, chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, like that. And so, I mean, that's Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu not only protected Srivasa Thakura and assured him of protection, but anybody who was associated with Srivasa Thakura got mercy. Mercy and protection. I mean, there's several stories about this. Like, there was one servant of Srivasa Thakura, maidservant. Her name was Duki. Duki means unhappy. Someone who's unhappy. Someone who's unhappy. Dukkha means unhappiness. Duki means someone who's unhappy. It's like yoga and yogi. And so Lord Chaitanya called her, and he gave her pure love of God just because she was serving Srivasa Thakura. And even there was another incident where Lord Chaitanya called a tailor, that means one who makes clothes. Just like in the West, sometimes someone is called by the last name of Taylor. That means in their family there were people who were sewing clothes. So, anyway, so he called the tailor of Srivasa Thakura who was serving Srivasa Thakura, and this tailor was a meat eater. Now, generally, as described in the Bhagavatam, what is that? Nivrittatar sharu bhagimana bhavoshada shrotra mano biramat kavuta mishloka gnanavadat apuman vidajeta vinal pashuknat. That if one is killing animals or eating animals or anyway connected with this nefarious activity, they will not become Krishna conscious, not be attracted to Krishna's pastimes. But Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave this tailor pure devotional service. Wasn't following the rules and regulations, but gave him pure devotional service. Why did he do that? Because this tailor was serving Lord Chaitanya's pure devotee. Try to remember this. Very, very important point. That's the point I've been continually making, just drilling into everyone's head. That if you serve Krishna's pure devotee, you will get pure devotional service. You don't have to do so many mental adjustments. Oh, am I a gopi? Am I a coward boy? Am I a rock? Am I a toad? You don't have to do any of those mental adjustments. You serve Krishna's devotee. Then you're sure of success. And don't commit offenses. Chant the holy name, follow the instructions of the devotee, obviously. Then you're sure of success. That's all you gotta do, Prabhu. But we want to make it so difficult. We want to make Krishna conscious so difficult, so complicated. Prabhupada said Krishna conscious is simple for the simple, and complicated for the complicated. So here you have the maidservant becoming a pure devotee, Narayani rolling on the ground in ecstasy, the tailor becoming a pure devotee in spite of eating meat because he pleased a Vaishnava. Wow. Didn't do anything else. Didn't chant his rounds. Of course, you should chant your rounds because Prabhupada wants us to chant our rounds. Can you imagine that? So this is a lesson for us, Develop Guru Bhakti, or Guru Bhakta. Guru Bhakti. So develop devotion for the pure devotee, and then success is there. Yashal Prasada, Bhagavat Prasada, Yashal Prasada, now Katika Topi. Okay. I've harped upon that point enough. So other stories about Srivasa Thakura's devotion. Okay, as I mentioned before, Srivasa Thakura used to have Lord Chaitanya's kirtan in his house. These are called nocturnal kirtans. It means every night. And they would go on for 72 hours, not only in the night, on and on and on and on. So during one of these kirtans, which Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was having in there, Srivasa Thakura's son died. Ooh. And Srivasa Thakura during the kirtan noticed. He said, these ladies seem a little disturbed. They seem to be crying. What's the problem? And he asked his wife, what's the problem? And she said, your son died. And Srivasa Thakura said, we don't want to disturb Lord Chaitanya's kirtan. Don't want to disturb Lord Chaitanya's kirtan, so you better not cry. Don't cause a disturbance, or I'll give you something to actually be disturbed about. And so the ladies, they just I guess, sewed their eyes closed so there wouldn't be any tears. But, Lord Chaitanya is God. He knows everything. So then what happened? As the kirtan ended, Lord Chaitanya said, something has happened here. What's happened? And Srivasa Thakura says, just a little thing. Lord Chaitanya said, what? Srivasa said, someone has passed away. My son has passed away. And Lord Chaitanya said, why didn't you tell me about it? And Srivasa Thakura said, because I didn't want to disturb the flow of the kirtan. Because it wasn't going to make any difference. He passed away during the kirtan. That's victory, victory, victory. You may say, well, it's so sad he passed away. No, he passed away in the middle of Lord Chaitanya's kirtan, which means back to home, back to Godhead. So Lord Chaitanya said, where is the body? So he went into the other room where the boy was laying, or the boy's body was. And he said, why have you left this world? And the boy came back to life, opened his eyes. He said, I have died during the kirtan. So many lives have I had. And then the boy went back again, or the body went back, and the soul left the body. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, because of your devotion, Srivasa Thakura, Lord Nityananda and myself will become your sons. And so we find that this became a little risque later on. Lord Nityananda would actually, not only in a psychological sense, consider himself the son of Srivasa Thakura, Malini, Srivasa Thakura's wife, but he would approach Srivasa Thakura's wife like a little boy, even though he was quite tall. He wasn't a little boy, he was older than Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he would approach Srivasa Thakura's wife Malini and sit on her lap and drink her breast milk and be, rockabye Lord Nityananda on the treetop, etc., like that. I mean, just amazing. He had all these different interactions like that in a childlike way with Malini. So Malini certainly didn't lose a son. In essence, I mean, to get Lord Nityananda as your son, even if he's full grown, is actually success. Srivasa Thakura, though, he was so devoted to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and so adverse to do anything else other than serving Krishna, he didn't want to work. So Lord Chaitanya was very concerned about him, because you see, Lord Chaitanya, he was not only concerned about his followers' spiritual lives, he was concerned about how they're maintaining themselves, how they're treating their children. Lord Chaitanya is a well-rounded personality. He understood that people have different needs in order to progress in spiritual life and just be stable in this material world. So we asked Srivasa Thakura, how do you maintain yourself? And you're a large family. You've got a large family. Your nieces, your probably their grandparents there and everything like that. And so Srivasa Thakura said, I have this 1, 2, 3 technique. And Lord Chaitanya said, what's the 1, 2, 3 technique? He says, if I have to fast for 3 times or 3 days, I will tie a water pot to myself and drown in the Ganges. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu got really upset at that point. He said, look, Srivasa Thakura, even if Lakshmi has to go begging, you will not be bereft of anything. Wow, that's amazing. So let's see, a few more stories about Srivasa Thakura. Time is running out. So here's another story. There was a great Bhagavatam reciter named Devananda Pandit, and he would regularly recite the Bhagavatam in Navadvip. Srivasa Thakura went by his place where he was reciting the Bhagavatam, and Srivasa Thakura felt so much ecstasy from hearing certain verses from the Bhagavatam, because the Bhagavatam is a literary incarnation of Krishna, that he started to roll on the ground, and Devananda Pandit's disciples thought, this guy is interfering with Bhagavatam class, and they chucked him out, and Devananda Pandit didn't do anything about it. Didn't do anything about it. And so Devananda Pandit lost his ability to understand the Bhagavatam, even though he was a great scholar and studied the Bhagavatam all the time and even gave classes in the Bhagavatam. So what to be done? Even Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu criticized Devananda Pandit. One time Devananda Pandit was giving his Bhagavatam class, and Lord Chaitanya walked by, and he screamed out at Devananda and all the students, "This guy will never understand Bhagavatam." So what happened with Devananda Pandit? Well, to get forgiven, he had to do two things. He had to serve a Vaishnava and then beg forgiveness from Srivasa Thakura. One thing he did is he served Vrkeshwara Pandit, who was one of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's great associates, who was a great dancer, and he protected Vrkeshwara Pandit when there was a large crowd surrounding Vrkeshwara Pandit. And because of that, Lord Chaitanya gave him the instruction to beg forgiveness from Srivasa Thakura, and Devananda Pandit then begged forgiveness and became a great devotee. Srivasa Thakura, just jumping from one story to another. There was other times when Srivasa Thakura was offended that people really got in trouble. So this also shows how important it is to interact with Krishna's devotees properly, because if you interact properly, you get pure devotional service, and if you interact improperly, you get suffering. Not only is your spiritual life just held up, but your material happiness is wiped out, and that's the case in this one particular individual named Gopal Chapala. He was really upset with Srivasa Thakura because he wasn't allowed into Srivasangam to hear Lord Chaitanya's kirtan. I mean, I'd be upset too. But he was so upset that he decided to frame Srivasa Thakura. How would he frame Srivasa Thakura? He wanted to make it seem like Srivasa Thakura was worshipping Durga, so we put all the ingredients for Durga right outside of Srivasa Thakura's door, like vermilion and other things like that. So Srivasa Thakura woke up in the morning and he said, "Look, everybody knows I'm worshipping Durga." He wasn't, and everybody knew it was a setup. It was a framing. It's called framing. When sometimes police do that, they put some marijuana in your car and then arrest you, even though you don't have marijuana, but they actually put something in to get you arrested. So this Gopal Chapala was doing that. So after 3 days after he committed that offense against Srivasa Thakura, he got leprosy. Again, we're seeing the importance of respecting or interacting with a pure devotee properly. So he got leprosy. And then he begged Lord Chaitanya to help him. He said, "You're the most munificent, supreme personality of Godhead. Help! You got to protect me." And Lord Chaitanya said, "Nah, I curse you to be bitten by the same worms of leprosy for millions of years." Oh my God. So eventually, okay, it's a happy ending. Gopal Chapala apologized when he was told to by Lord Chaitanya to Srivasa Thakura, and he was given pure devotional service. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the most merciful, most beneficent Supreme Personality of Godhead, or appearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he will not tolerate interacting improperly with his devotees. And if one interacts properly, one gets pure devotional service. Just look. So that's the topic of tonight's discussion. Interacting properly, interacting improperly. And Lord Chaitanya even tested Srivasa Thakura's devotion one time for Lord Nityananda. What did he do? He said, "Dear Srivasa Thakura, why do you let Lord Nityananda into your house? You know, he's really weird. He's an Avaduta. Why you let him in?" And then, anyway, we'll see that. All right, someone's sending a comment. We already said that already. Yes, that was in yesterday's class anyway. So please wait a second before I comment some more. So anyway, so he said to Lord, he said to Srivasa Thakura, Lord Chaitanya said to Srivasa Thakura, um, how do you let this Lord Nityananda, this weird Avaduta, in your house? And Srivasa Thakura said, I will never be deterred from my conviction that Lord Nityananda is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even if Lord Nityananda goes into a liquor store, or even if he marries a Muslim girl, I will never. And Lord Chaitanya blessed and embraced Srivasa Thakura, embraced him and blessed him with pure love of God. There's one or two more stories. One time, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was just like exhibiting symptoms of extreme ecstasy, and everybody was worried. They sent him to one of the local psychiatrists, or Ayurvedic people there, and they said he has a wind disorder. And Srivasa Thakura diagnosed him later, and he said, "No, this is not a wind disorder. It's pure love of God." So he assured everybody, that Lord Chaitanya was not crazy, or spiritually crazy, but devotees are supposed to be spiritually crazy. So, just one final point is that in Srivasa Sangam, which is where the Sankirtan movement started, there were no impure personalities allowed. You have to be an absolutely pure devotee. Couldn't be a neophyte, couldn't be a Madhyamadikari, you had to be an Uttamadikari to enter. So sometimes things happened where others entered and it disturbed Lord Chaitanya's meditation. One story that's quite familiar, I'm sure you've all heard, is the story of Srivasa Thakura's mother-in-law, the mother-in-law story. I sometimes make jokes about mothers-in-laws. That Srivasa Thakura's mother-in-law snuck in just to hear the kirtan and to see it. Of course, she could have heard it from the street. But to see it, she was hiding behind the drapes. And so Lord Chaitanya was having the kirtan and chanting. He says, "No ecstasy. I am not experiencing the normal ecstasy. Somebody is here, is polluting things that shouldn't be here. Look around." And they looked around, and they looked behind the drapes, and they saw this mother-in-law. They threw her out. That's nothing against mothers-in-laws if they were actually pure devotees. And there were a lot of ladies there, too. It's nothing against ladies. There were already ladies in the kirtan, like Malini and others. They threw her out. And then Lord Chaitanya enjoyed his normal ecstasy. So Lord Chaitanya, it's very interesting. However, Prabhupada instructed us to have kirtans publicly, because Lord Chaitanya had his kirtans publicly, too. But his kirtans publicly were just chanting Hare Krishna. And the kirtans that were done in the house of Srivasa Thakura were sometimes Leela kirtans, very intimate stuff. So it's the intimate pastimes that should not be revealed to people in general. Those intimate pastimes are meant to be discussed only between liberated souls. Okay. One other story about an improper person entering the Srivasa Sangam was that once upon a time a Brahmin was let in by Srivasa Thakura, and this Brahmin, he was considered very pure because he existed only by drinking milk. And so the same thing happened with Lord Chaitanya's kirtan. He said, "Someone is here who doesn't belong here." And he said, "Well, this Brahman's here, but he's very pure. He just lives by drinking milk." And Lord Chaitanya said, "You're not going to become pure just by drinking milk. Just get rid of the guy." And the Brahmin He became humble at that point because he was very proud. You know, people become very proud of their austerities. That's a common thing that occurs. You know, an austere person, someone is able to control his senses, becomes very proud, and therefore he loses control of his mind. That's the danger of austerity. It's better to follow the middle path. So the Brahmin became very uh, humble, and then what Chaitanya said, he can stay. So, anyways, the moral of the story, or the stories that I'm telling, that one gets pure devotional service by serving a Vaishnava, and by offending the Vaishnava, by criticizing the Vaishnava, one gets the opposite and loses even material opulence or material happiness. So that's the secret. A big, big, big secret. You don't have to be a big scholar. Maybe you want to be a scholar, that's fine, but you don't have to be a big scholar. You simply have to please the Acharya. And that's my consciousness, that I simply have to please His Divine Grace of the Prabhupada, and then I am sure that all success will be there, and then I get a chance to please Prabhupada. What does it mean to please Prabhupada? It means a sense of identification that one is Prabhupada's servant, life after life. Janme, Janme, Prabhu say. Okay. So that's all we have time for. Maybe we take a question or two. Hold on a second. Let me unmute yourselves. Uh, Give me a second, Vito. Okay. Does anybody have a question or two or three? Oh, today is Mahamantra's birthday, the Holy Name's birthday.
Hare
No.
Krishna Maharaj.
Oh, there is Prime Govinda. What's that? Shri Shripad. Shri Shripad. Uh, Prime Govinda Goswami. Acharya. Whatever.
Oh, sounds like very poison.
He's a Prime Govinda is a Damvasi. He's actually from Sridham Mayapur, or from West Bengal. He's from West Bengal, so he is, all this is in his blood. He's actually born Krishna conscious. So, all right, so what's up, Prime Govinda?
Maharaj, a technical question.
Yeah,
Maha, Mahaprabhu said to that Brahmana who came to visit him, complain against Nityananda Prabhu, that if the thorn is poked, splinter on the toes, you cannot take it out from the shoulder. Means if I commit offense to a particular devotee, I have to go there. I cannot uh, do some other endeavor to get rid of that offense.
right, right.
So how come Srivasa Thakur, Devananda Pandit committed offense to Srivasa Thakur, but he got delivered or he got ecstasy through Bakreshwar Pandit?
No, he got when he served Rakeshwara Pandit, he got the intelligence to actually intelligence and instruction by Lord Chaitanya that gave him the mercy to go to Srivas Thakur, beg for forgiveness. It's not. I didn't say that he got forgiven by pleasing Prakeshwara Pandit, but that was one step towards his understanding as to what he should do.
Mhm.
Krishna was pleased. Yeah, Krishna was pleased that he served Rakeshwara Pandit, and therefore Lord Chaitanya gave him the instruction, and he had the intelligence to go to see Srivas Thakur and beg for forgiveness. He did actually beg for forgiveness.
But he was experiencing some ecstasy before that. I was just curious, maybe technically.
Yes, he was experiencing ecstasy before that. That's true. He was experiencing ecstasy because he's serving a Vaishnava. But one will not experience the full ecstasy or the full realization if one has committed an offense against a pure devotee.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for clearing up.
Yes, yes, Pran Govinda hopefully be taking sannyas pretty soon, and then he'll become liberated.
I'll become your servant.
Yes, you'll become liberated, and then you can render service. That's an inside joke. Anyway, So anybody else have a question? Want to ask a question? No.
At least he
Uh,
didn't.
Hare,
At least he didn't say danda dharan matrena nor narayan bhavet. As soon you take danda, you become Narayan.
yes, you'll become Narayan, and then I'll have to worship you. All right. Param
Hare Krishna.
Joshi, you have a question?
Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances on your lotus feet.
Haribol.
Yes. How are you, Babuji? Mahadev.
I'm doing great. Looking forward.
Yes. Yeah, as we say, like we have to serve the devotees and please the devotees. That's very important. But you know that sometimes what happens, like unintentionally, some offenses happens.
Yes.
Yeah. So how should we know like that sort of things?
Well,
That's not intentionally.
should
That's
always beg for forgiveness and offer respect to the Vaishnavas, even if you haven't or you don't even know about any offenses. You just that's why we chant Vanchakalpa Turvyascha Kripasindavyavacha every day to offer
okay.
respects to all the Vaishnavas. And one should be happy to see a Vaishnava. It's actually offensive not even to be if one is not happy to see a Vaishnava.
Yeah. If
So
some's like we solve or we do some things, if they are not happy, that's the some sort
yeah,
of
we have to
offensive
we
as
have
well.
to we have to be very careful. Bandhan we savadana, Mate, as we chant every day.
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you,
Okay,
Maharaj.
good,
Yeah.
good point, good question. So I think we're going to end now because why are we going to end? Because it's time. Thank you all for joining us on Srivasa Thakura's appearance day, and what you see behind me is Shaima Kund. I am sitting at the Manasa Pavana Ghat in Shaima Kund, at least the picture behind me is Shaima Kund. And hopefully in the near future I'm going there again. Let's see what Krishna wants. Okay, on that happy note, all glories